Hi, everybody. Welcome to our quick tips session for today. It looks like I am here all by my lonesome today after we had a record high last week. Probably because I forgot to send the reminder email until about 5 minutes ago. So that's okay. If you're listening to me now, you are enjoying this on our YouTube channel. Thanks again to our technology department for helping us get that on there. So today we'll be talking about effective directions and how these can improve your child or your teenager's cooperation with your instructions. As always, though, we start with this quote by Dr. Emily King. She said this last spring: "Working, parenting, and teaching are 3 different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's too much. So do the best you can. And when you have to pick, because at some point you will, choose connection. Sometimes that's the only thing that we have going for us." All right. So acknowledgements for today. I can't remember if I said or not. I am Jen Baker. I am the district behaviorist here in Benicia Unified, and I started putting together these quick tip sessions a couple of months ago. This is actually our 8th session, I think, just in desperation to try and do anything I can to support the parents out there. So today's session is on effective directions, and I pulled from a couple of different resources online, including a book that I have, but also some online things that I found that were on a couple of military websites. I found it really interesting, and they had a lot of really good parenting strategies for parents that were returning from deployment. And actually one of the videos we're going to watch today is from one of those sites. So those are linked here. It looks like we have one person joining us live today. I don't know, I'm not sure who it is, so I don't know if he'd been here before, but the basic rule of thumb is the be responsible. Take what works for your family, leave the rest. If it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. Just come back next week and you can listen to the next tip. And for our person who is here live, I don't always see the chat. So if you have a question, just unmute and interrupt me at any time. It's perfectly okay. So what we're going to talk about today, first we're going to talk about giving effective directions. I'm going to start with, we have a 2-minute video on the ABCs of behavior, which will set the stage for us talking about the 5 steps for giving effective directions. And then at the end, I included just some kind of like extra bonus strategies that are related and that I thought were really good. Practicing with games, setting limits, and something called precision requests. All right, so first our video on understanding behavior, or what we call the ABCs of behavior.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I'm going to talk to you about the ABCs of behavior. When children act out, sometimes parents react irrationally because they're so wrapped up in the moment. Understanding this concept will change the way you work with your child for the better. The ABCs of behavior provides more opportunities to correct negative behaviors and actually prevent them from happening in the first place. The ABCs of behavior are simple. It's an acronym to help you remember it. A stands for antecedent, B stands for behavior, and C stands for consequence. Antecedent is considered what happened before the inappropriate behavior. What happened 5 minutes before the behavior? What happened 10 minutes before the behavior? What happened earlier that day? When you understand what triggers a child's behavior, it can help you address it. Behavior is what your child does that is inappropriate. Did they hit their brother or roll their eyes? When you talk about behavior, it's important you use the skill of observe and describe from the Smarter Parenting website to describe what you saw. For example, if they hit their brother, you say, "You hit your brother in the arm." The consequence of the behavior is evaluating what happened after the behavior. This includes good and bad things that may have happened as a result of the behavior. When a parent is able to recognize the ABCs of behavior, they can address the different issues they are dealing with in different areas and at different times, rather than just dealing with the negative behaviors when they happen. For example, let's take tantruming behavior. Most parents know what will cause a tantrum behavior in their child, whether it's telling your child to clean their room, stop playing video games, to do their homework, or just saying no to something they really want. Really? Tantrums could stem from anything. Parents can use this knowledge to address future negative behaviors using the skill of preventive teaching to help prepare their child. Considering what happens before an inappropriate behavior is the antecedent of the ABCs of behavior. When a child is throwing a tantrum, you can use the skill of correcting behaviors, which is part of the behavior section of the ABCs, to explain what they are doing while telling them what they need to do instead. After the tantrum, you can use the skill of effective consequences in decision-making. Instead of just reacting to the behaviors, you now have different options, and this makes your job as a parent a lot more flexible and easier. Remembering the ABCs of behavior will help you evaluate the best way to help your child improve. Our website, smarterparenting.com, has everything you need to help you in this process, from games and activities to worksheets and handouts. Smarter Parenting is made possible by generous support from donors who help us keep these lessons free. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation for more content and videos for families.
All right, so why I showed that. This is a basic, is understanding that behaviors occur for a reason. And so obviously the problem behavior we're talking about today is the kids not listening to our directions or not following our directions in a timely manner. And what we'll be talking about today is how to give effective instructions. And that is one of the most basic, what we call preventative or antecedent interventions. When she was talking about the ABC contingency, we have the A, which comes before the behavior, the antecedent. We have the B, which is the behavior itself. And then we have the consequence, which is what happens after, good, bad, or otherwise. So antecedent strategies are preventative strategies that we can implement in the home or school environment to reduce the occurrence of problem behavior. Fundamentally, these strategies focus on modifying the environment to make things less likely that the problem behavior is going to occur. So essentially, we're altering the environment before the problem happens with the goal of having the behavior not to happen at all. So what that looks like in relation to preventing non-compliance, that's kind of the behaviorist term for not following a direction. Delaying or refusing to follow directions is one of the most common behavior problems reported by parents. So giving effective directions is what we call a foundational or a preventative practice. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And there are 5 straightforward, not always easy, but definitely straightforward steps to help your kids follow directions. So what are effective directions? I'm going to go through each of the 5, and then we're going to talk in detail about each one. So effective directions includes getting their attention first, speaking calmly, firmly, and concisely, avoiding questions, so statements instead of questions, using wait time or pausing, and then following through to make sure that they complete the direction that they were given. So let's talk about each one of these a little more in detail. So the first one is to get their attention first. Like giving directions when your child isn't focused on you sets you both up for failure. So what we want to do first is we want to, depending on the age of the child, the younger they are, the closer you want to be, but you want to increase your proximity to them. Make sure they're looking toward you or at you. You can make this easier by moving into their line of sight, or if they're a younger child, kneeling down to get down to their level. You ask for their attention by saying something like, look toward me, please. I need to tell you something, or I need you to listen. Some of our kids have a difficult time with the nonverbal aspects of language, or they have a difficult time with direct eye contact. That can be seen as either a demand or something kind of threatening. Particularly some kids with special needs have a really hard time with eye contact. So asking them to look toward you instead of at you kind of accommodates for that. And then once you have your child's attention, you want to keep it. Like they're not going to be able to really understand what you're saying to them and hear you if they're playing video games or doing something else, if the TV's on in the background or something like that. So minimize any distractions, have them put down whatever they're doing, turn off the TV, whatever. And then we also want to model respect because we're expecting it of them. We show it to them by giving them our full attention when we're giving them our direction. This also is a signal to them that what we're saying is important. If we're doing 100 other things and kind of say something as an aside, it doesn't look important to us, so it's not going to be important to them. All right, so the next one, step 2, speak calmly and concisely. Kids tend to hear a lot of white noise when adults are speaking to them. And I always think of, this is kind of a dated reference, but the classic Peanuts cartoons where the teacher in Charlie Brown's classroom is like, wah, 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 wah. It may be tempting to speak a lot or to speak louder or speak over them when there's something important that you want them to do. But it's actually more effective to capture their attention by speaking in a softer voice to make them listen. So you want to keep a calm, even tone, give one direction at a time when possible, particularly for younger kids, but even sometimes for older kids, it depends. Say exactly what needs to be said for your child to follow the directions. Cut out all of the extra stuff. And use visual cues. So some kids who have language processing issues can have a really hard time processing spoken directions. So for some kids, adding like a visual cue, like pointing to what need, like if you're asking them to, you know, sweep the floor, pointing to what needs to be swept, or you can demonstrate what you want them to do while you're asking them. For example, please set the rest of, like, set one of the places at the table and then say, please set the rest of the table the way I'm setting this spot. So you can actually give them something to refer to or give them a visual cue. That's an option for some kids. But the real core of this is just to say exactly what you need them to do. So an example would be, shoes please, or put on your shoes. So you're just saying what they need to do. A non-example would be, hurry up, I've already talked to you 20 times. This is the 3rd time. You need to do this. We've got to get out the door or we're going to be late. Please put on your shoes. Put on your shoes is lost there in all the other chaos. So it's really critical to focus on tell them what to do and be as specific as possible. There's also something called the rule of 5, which some parents find helpful to remember. 5 words or less, 5 letters or less. That's not always practical for an older child, especially if it's more complicated direction. But for the younger ones, the rule of 5 works really well. Okay, so the next one, step 3, tell, don't ask. This is the quote that I found on one of the websites. If your directions aren't up for negotiation, keep that door closed with a lock, preferably a deadbolt. I had to put that on there. I thought that was so funny. Because a lot of times we say, hey, it's time, you know, do you want to get ready for dinner or whatever? If it's a choice, fine. If it is not a choice, you need to have a period at the end of the sentence. So an example, again, would be put on your shoes. Or if you feel like you want to give a choice, because choices are really great for increasing compliance, okay? But you don't want to give a choice about whether or not they're going to follow your direction, but you could give a choice like, do you want to wear your green shoes or your red shoes? Okay, so there's no choice about putting on the shoes, but they can choose about which shoes they want to put on. A non-example would be, can you put on your shoes? Okay, we don't want to leave any room for negotiation or for them to say no. Offering choices, like I said, is a really good way to avoid power struggles. But everything in life is not always a choice. So if you can't offer a choice within a boundary that you're comfortable with, make it a statement and put a period on the end of the sentence. All right, so step 4, use wait time. After giving instructions to your child, pause for 3 to 5 seconds to allow their brain to process and apply the information. As adults, we're used to processing information a lot quicker. Kids take more time. Okay. And there's a lot of research. I found it referred to on multiple websites that shows that kids are more likely to follow directions if you give them a hearty pause after the direction. So your child still may not follow directions after that. So you don't want to wait too long. If it's been longer than a full 3 to 5 seconds, it's okay then to repeat your direction or to set a limit. And that's a throwback to last week. We did a whole session on how to effectively set limits. So that's an option too, but we'll go on to step 5 now about one of the most important parts after wait time. We have to follow through with the direction that we gave. We don't want to get in the habit of giving directions and they don't do it and we don't follow through, because it just undermines our effectiveness and our authority in the future. So consistency can be really difficult, particularly right now with parents that have so much going on, but making sure you follow through on a direction really does pay off in the long run, because what you'll see is your kids will start to follow the direction sooner because they know they're going to have to do it eventually anyway. So either stay in the area or come back to check, set a limit if necessary. And absolutely, we also did a session on praise and behavior specific praise. When they do listen and they follow a direction, especially immediately or the first time, acknowledge this in an age appropriate way. Use behavior specific praise and tell them how much you appreciate it when they follow directions the first time. If we make it a priority, they make it a priority. So I did have to put on here one thing. We're going to watch a video next, but this is from our session last week on setting limits. We call this the cycle of coercion, where kids can get really good about drawing us into a power struggle, which is one way to get negative attention, which is reinforcing for some kids. It's also a way to delay whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do, which is effective for other kids. So engaging in a back and forth could inadvertently escalate the situation, and it really just creates a lot of other problems instead of just focusing on a real basic thing like following a direction. So you'll see in the video some really great examples of ignoring the attitude, the eye rolls, the comments, and just focus through, or focus on having them follow through with whatever it is that you've asked them to do. So if you want more information on this, go back to last week's session on setting limits. But the important thing here is do not pick up the rope. I showed this last week, this picture of the adult and the little girl where she's kind of waving the rope and trying to get the adult to pick it up. And the adult's just like standing there like, I'll just wait as long as I need to, but I'm not going to pick it up. You cannot have a power struggle if it's just one-sided. All right, so this video is about 5 minutes. This is one of the ones I got on one of the military websites, and it's one of the best effective directions. It's a little cheesy because it's a role play, but it does a really good job, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So here we go. It's about 5 minutes.
Give effective directions. Giving effective directions is one of the most powerful steps that parents can take to improve children's cooperation. Unclear directions lead to conflict.
Come on, guys. Time for baseball practice. What's the holdup? Let's go. Jeremy, Henry, get down here right now. Come on, let's go. Move it.
I don't want to go to stupid baseball practice. This sucks.
Get your hats and gloves on ASAP. Come on, guys, get it together. I shouldn't have to wait on you. When I ask you to do something, that means do it.
We didn't hear you.
Well, clean the wax out of your ears.
What is going on, guys?
I'll tell you what's going on. I told these guys at lunch we needed to leave at 2:45. It's almost 3.
You guys, we've talked to you about being late. You should know better.
Yeah, you should know better. How many times do we have to go over this?
All right, Jim. They've got the point.
No, I don't think they
We've
do.
got the point.
Thanks. Now they're talking back to me. Thanks a lot.
Well, arguing about it is not going to get you there any faster, so you might as well just go.
Come on, guys, get in the car. We'll talk about this after.
That didn't feel good. When you don't give clear, effective directions, you can get into disagreements with your children. Kids can get in the habit of not minding or talking back, and they don't learn to follow through. Let's watch Dad try a different strategy.
Jeremy, Henry, time for baseball practice. Please put your game away now and get your hats and shoes on.
I don't want to go to stupid baseball practice. This sucks.
Thanks for getting ready, guys. You're a big help. I really appreciate it. Hey,
Quite a different outcome. This time, Dad gave directions that encouraged the kids to cooperate. He avoided conflict, threats, and coercion. These kinds of directions work and build positive relationships. First, Dad stays calm. He checks his emotions. Instead of yelling, he gives the direction in close contact, less chance of not being heard or being misunderstood. Now that Dad has the boy's attention, he gives a short, clear, and specific direction using the child's name and the words please and now.
Jeremy, Henry, please put your game away now and get your hats and shoes on.
A direction like this is easy to understand and to follow. Dad remains calm. He waits for 10 seconds. He doesn't get drawn into any arguments. In most cases, waiting those 10 seconds is all it takes.
Thanks for getting ready, guys. You're a big help. I really appreciate it.
And once his kids comply, Dad makes sure to follow through by expressing his appreciation. Praise powerfully reinforces behavior and makes it more likely that kids will follow directions in the future. Giving effective directions strengthens relationships and helps children cooperate. Over time, they learn the life skills they need to be successful. Let's review the steps to effective directions. Stay calm. Get close. Give a short, clear, and specific direction using the child's name and the words please and now. Wait 10 seconds. Follow through with praise.
Giving effective directions is harder than it looks because emotions so often get in our way. It's easy for us to jump into a negative statement or a complaint. Taking a couple of minutes, just like the father did in the video, to take a breath really helps us to recall the simple script for giving effective directions. Tom, please put your shoes away now.
Okay, this is somebody that's not an adult. They need to have some direction. So by breaking it down to the simplest levels, that helped a lot. I mean, I used it today.
Giving effective directions is the foundation of getting children to cooperate. Practice this skill. Download and print the Giving Effective Directions summary for a handy reminder, and do the action plan below.
All right. There we go. So I had never seen that video before, but it hits all the high points. There are a couple of differences, like it says wait for 10 seconds instead of 3 to 5. See what's comfortable for you, but I would never go longer than 10. The other thing that I forgot that he did, which was really good, is sometimes physical touch for kids, particularly kids with attention deficit, or kids that even don't have that diagnosis but are really distractible. It can be really grounding to have physical touch. The other thing is him taking a break and taking a breath before he walked up. And I really like the script about adding please and now. I didn't have that in the slides, but that's another good script to follow is please do the simple direction now and to use their name to ensure that you have their attention. So that's the foundation for effective directions. But I also wanted to talk about just a couple of things that are related for people that want to do a little more or try some other things, but definitely don't do these other things if you haven't done the foundational skill of giving effective directions. So some additional strategies. I found some really good things for your littler ones. If you've got younger kids, Playing some of the oldie but goodie games, such as Simon Says, red light, green light, or follow the leader, are actually a play-based way to work on following directions, which I thought was great because all of these games have them listening to hear what you're instructing and then practicing in a fun way to actually follow. It makes following directions fun. So I thought that was a really great suggestion for the younger ones. I also found there was from this confidencemeetsparenting.com Lego game. You can search for it. It'll be linked in the slides. These parents made up this Lego game and they have it free online. You can kind of see a picture here, but it's because everybody has Legos. And so they have a lot of kids like Legos. So using the Lego figures, they have this little instruction making game. And I guess it's all like printable and stuff, but there's all these little directions you follow with the Lego people. So I thought that was a really fun way to do it. If you don't have little ones, if you have, secondary students or, middle and high school, I'd like to refer you again back to the setting limits session that we did last week. Because limits are just a really powerful tool for teaching appropriate behavior. It's not about power struggling or asserting authority or showing them who's boss, but to provide them with guidance and respect. So in a nutshell, to set a limit, you explain briefly what behavior is inappropriate. You explain briefly why the behavior is inappropriate. You give reasonable choices with consequences. You allow time for them to process, and then you enforce your consequences. So if there's a habit of them not following your directions, like let's say you've given the first request and they're done, and you've given the second, so they've heard you, but they're choosing not to comply. That's where you go in with step number 3, which is a reasonable choice with a consequence. If you do this now, then this. If you don't do this now, then this. Think about what you want to do, and then you allow time for them to choose, and then be prepared to enforce. Okay, our job is not to make them do things, it's to teach them how their choices have pleasant and unpleasant outcomes. And this is for all ages. We keep coming back to visual supports and schedules and routines, and it's in every one of these quick tip sessions because it's such a basic. But having schedules, having routines established and schedules posted, particularly ones that the kids can follow and refer to, reduces how often you have to give those instructions. You have to give fewer reminders if they're following a schedule. If all of the information is coming from you, then you have to continue to be there and give all the information. Whereas when we have visual supports like a schedule or a checklist, we're teaching them that they can get their information from this other source. And then our job is just to acknowledge when they get it right and to follow through when they don't. Using routines is a great way to breed cooperation. It helps them learn to follow directions. There's visual picture schedules. I found these the bottom one here is these little routine cards for younger kids or kids that maybe have some developmental delays. They have these pre-made routine cards, which are not expensive, and you can set them out. Like you can see right here, it says, make your bed, brush your teeth, go to the potty. And it has little cards that you can set out, which are great. For older students, I have an example on the left of something that's a little more age appropriate, a basic checklist for the different parts of the day that they refer to and check off. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was a very specific intervention called precision requests. So what this is, and I got this from one of my favorite books, but basically what it is, it's a structured command sequence used to obtain quick compliance with a direction. So this is a little more of a formal intervention, or what we call an evidence-based intervention. It has been studied, it does work, but it's a little more technical than just giving the effective direction. So there's a little more to it, but particularly if you have if you are giving effective directions, and it's really not about how clearly you're communicating or following through, but there's still a lot of resistance, this might be something that you want to consider. I wouldn't start here, but this is where you go with the basic. And if you need a little bit more, add a little bit more. This would be an example of a little bit more. So precision requests, before starting, you pick 3 to 5 concisely worded rules or routines, like an area or direction that's causing a lot of problems. You decide limits and consequences ahead of time. Like, let's say it's always a problem about like getting their homework done or whatever, getting dressed on time in the morning, whatever it is. But decide the limits and the consequences ahead of time, not in the moment. And then you review the plan with the child or the teenager and make sure that they understand, and then you pick a start date. So then what the intervention looks like is you have your first request, where when requesting, you use a firm, calm tone, make a statement rather than a question. So that's all the same. Be specific and concise. That's all the same. But what you do is you increase proximity, you get eye contact. And for the first request, you use the word please. Kim, please turn off the computer and set the table. And then you go back to your effective directions. You wait 3 to 5 seconds. You don't get pulled into any power struggles. If they comply, you praise compliance. If they don't comply, you go to the second request. So the first request is please. The second request is need. So you repeat your request, but you add the word need. So instead of Kim, please turn off the computer, it's Kim, I need you to turn off the computer and set the table. After the second request, again, you wait 3 to 5 seconds. You don't get pulled into power struggles. If they comply, you praise compliance. If they don't comply, that's where you go to whatever the predetermined consequence was that you decided before starting, or if you've set a limit, you implement the limit. And you always do your best to make sure they come back and do the request eventually, so that they don't think that they can avoid it by not complying. So when we talk about a predetermined consequence, this would be like, again, I don't recommend that you start with this, start with effective requests. But if you need a little more, this is a specific intervention that you could do. So you could do the please need sequence, but one of the predetermined consequences could be something like this. You post a list of numbers in descending order. And the highest number would correspond to the number of minutes for a preferred daily activity. So let's say they usually have 45 minutes of social media time before going to bed or something like that, or video games or free time or whatever it is. So you actually write that, and the top number would be 45, and you number it all the way down to 1. And you can do this on a piece of paper, you could do it on a whiteboard, whatever. Each time you do the please need sequence and they fail to comply with the second request, which is I need you to blank, you cross off a number. And then at the end of the day, let's say you have 3 numbers, so it's 45 minutes. Let's say you have 3 numbers crossed off, then you spend 3 minutes reviewing the rules and the expectations for whatever the activity is. And then 45 minus 3 is 42, and they have the remaining 42 minutes to do their preferred activity. So hopefully that's not too technical, but the idea is for every time you cross off a number, that's 1 more minute of having to spend talking about and practicing. And if you don't have any, you get the full amount of free time or preferred activities. All right, so just to wrap up, in summary, effective directions, it is the gold standard of preventative strategies. It's as important as a schedule. It sets up cooperation, responsibility. It makes a more peaceful home. It does take practice, but even like we saw in the video, that was a little cheesy. It was a role play, but it really does prevent a lot of like the conflict and the emotion. And you saw in that example where the kids were unhappy and then the dad was unhappy and then the mom got in it and then the mom and the dad had a disagreement. Like it can go south really fast, especially when we're all home with each other all the time. So effective directions is a really good preventative strategy. Always get their attention first, speak calmly and concisely. If it's not a choice, do not have a question mark on the end of it. Have a period, make a statement, not a question. Always allow for wait time or processing time, and always, always, always follow through. The effective directions is our antecedent strategy, but the consequence, which is what happens after the behavior, you always want to make sure that it feels really good and they get acknowledged when they follow the direction, and that you don't feed into power struggles and they have to follow the direction anyway when they don't follow the direction initially. And just some supporting strategies to give you more ideas for the little ones. There's some good games that you can play to practice following directions. Schedules and routines are great. Visual supports are great. Setting limits, really for everyone, but especially your teenagers. And if you need a little bit more of a specific intervention, the precision requests with the please needs sequence and the predetermined consequences. So that is about it for effective directions. I do always end on this slide. I put some new links on here over the last couple of weeks on Zoom fatigue and anxiety. I've added some more secondary resources, and there's some new things on setting limits, and on today's thing about following directions. The video is on there that I showed today. So basically, if you haven't seen this, if you're seeing this for the first time, this is basically a parent web page. It looks like a lot, but it's pretty easy to navigate. You can scroll right to left or up and down. You see that the different categories are organized under columns. So like behavior contracts are under one column. How to stop yelling at your kids is under another column. And you can scroll up and down, and there's videos and pamphlets and quick tips and things like that that you can look at. We also have office hours. So the flyer for office hours, and basically office hours is 30 minutes with me if you want to talk more specifically about your child and what's going on in your home, or maybe need some help picking out which of these strategies to start with, because the idea is not that you would do all of this. You start with the foundational strategies and you try one thing at a time, because we don't want to do any more than we need to. But the office hours flyer is under the first column under parent supports and Benicia. You basically open the flyer, click on the link, and you can sign up for a 30 minutes office hours with me. And for our person that's here live, this will be posted on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you already know it's on YouTube, so I don't need to say anything else. So I think that's about it for following directions, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye for now.